joy of Advent, dear brothers and sisters. And today is the 17th of December, and that's a very special time in the season of Advent. It's in the tradition of the Catholic Church. It's the O antiphons, O come Emmanuel, and so forth. And it's building up to Christmas. This morning, we begin a series of reflections on Advent and Christmas to prepare us for Christmas. And today, I'd like to reflect on the origin of Jesus, because this Advent season and the whole of Christmas is about Jesus and the story of Jesus, the origins. So, in the Bible, we have two gospel writers that talk about, only two that talk about the origin of Jesus, and that's the Gospel of Matthew and the Gospel of Luke. The Gospel of Mark and John don't tell about the story of the origin of Jesus. So what does Matthew tell us about the origins of Jesus, where he came from, and why is it that he has become the center of the Catholic faith? So Matthew takes us back into the history of the Israelite people, going back to Abraham, and then down to King David, and then to Jesus. The Gospel of Matthew begins with the genealogy of Jesus' life, and Matthew takes us back to Abraham, and then to David. So Abraham was taken from the land of Ur, and then and his descendants were then given the land of Israel. So the first part of that history is about the birth of Israel from Abraham's family, and then taking possession of the land of Israel, and ending with the kingdom of David. So that's the first phase of that history. The second is beginning from King David, how they came to possess the land, and after that they lose the land because the leaders of Israel were corrupt people worshipped other gods, and even incompetent leaders. People were about their own power, corrupt leaders. And then that takes it from David to the Babylonian exile, where Israel was captured by Babylon, and they were deprived of what makes them the people of God, and that is the temple, the priest, and the prophet. So that's the second stage of the history or the origins of Jesus. Then the third is from the Babylonian exile to the birth of Jesus, which is the story of hope, where the prophets promise Israel the Messiah, and then the birth of Jesus. But it's interesting that in this history of the origins of Jesus, or the genealogy of Jesus, it includes 5 women. Now, in a patriarchal society like Ethiopic society is patriarchal, where men are given the primary space, Israel is a patriarchal society. But it's interesting that 5 women were named in the genealogy of Jesus. And to make it more even interesting, they are women of not very good repute. They were women who are considered sinners at the time. So we have Tamar, the Canaanite, so non-Jew women who had 3 husbands, all of them the sons of Judah, and then but none of those sons, she did not bear a child out of those 3 sons. And then against all odds and culture, she sleeps with her uncle, father-in-law, Judah, and she gets a son. And from them, that son becomes an important part in the line of David. Then you have Rahab, a Canaanite woman, but she's now a real prostitute who sleeps with another of those kings. Then you have Ruth, the Moabite, who slept with King Boaz, and the child that was born out of Ruth and Moab became the grandfather of David, King David. Then you have this other woman that Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah, is one of the leaders of the military under David. David, lusts for this woman, kills Uriah, and then sleeps with Bathsheba. And out of that is born a son, Solomon. So, and then finally you have Mary. Her story too is one of, not in line with culture. She has a son, but begotten by the Holy Spirit before she marries Joseph. So, what is Matthew trying to tell us in this genealogy is that God works in the crooked lines of history, in governments that are not, that are unjust, corrupt, incompetent leaders, and then also, taking these women that are part of this history. So Matthew pictures Jesus' genealogy as a story of where God writes in the crooked lines of people, but also in the crooked lines of institutions, kingdoms, that behind this is the power of God that even writes in the messy parts of our human history. So behind that is God working in history, that the church and the world is made up of holy people, but also sinful people, that the church is both holy and sinful. But behind this is God working in history, and out of that history, God becomes human, becomes God with us, Emmanuel, through Jesus, and then Jesus brings us this message of hope. So God is bigger than the world, bigger than the kings, bigger than the politics, even bigger than the church. Sometimes the church becomes a little bit sinful, but God is behind that history. I'd like to end our reflection this morning with the words of Pope John Paul XXIII, who called the Second Vatican Council a very important pope in the history of the church. And before he goes to sleep, Pope John Paul XXIII would say this prayer: God, I'm going to sleep, and this is your church, and you better take good care of this church because I am going to sleep. So dear friends, as we prepare this final week of Advent and preparing for Christmas, the origins of Jesus through Matthew gives us much hope and encouragement in a world that is full of despair, wars, and gloomy days. But our hope is a God that is greater than the evil and the weakness in our society. And so may you be guided by this God during this Advent as we come close to celebrating Christmas this year. And peace and joy of Advent and Christmas be with you.